Hey, everybody. Welcome to the very first episode of the Neutral Corner. I'm Coach Jay, and with us we've got my son, Andrew the Golden Boy Burgoyne. And with us we've got my assistant coach at the boxing club, and a guest host tonight is Kaylin Hard Ticket May. All right. Well, we finally got this going. We've been looking to do this for a while, and we're finally on the air.
It looks really cool. I know I was just gushing about it a second ago, but everything looks awesome.
Well, I'm looking forward to it. This is the first of hopefully many more to come. For everybody watching, we've got a lot of really cool guest hosts coming up. Between world champion boxers and amateur coaches and professionals and Olympians, we've got some fantastic guests coming on. I'd also like to say I've got a pretty special tie to Reddit, to the subcommunity of amateur boxing. I spend a lot of time on there answering questions and giving up and coming fighters advice on their fights. So we all, at the end of every episode, will answer a couple of Reddit questions that come up in the Reddit threads, and see if we can give them a good go. All right, what do we want to start with today? We get into a lot of these kind of conversations at the club.
Might as well air them for everybody to see, right?
Might as well. This is one of the first ones. We'll get into the dirty ones later. Into the ones that there'll be a little bit of a discussion here, but this is the one that is on my mind. Is Canelo's loss to Bivol. Nobody saw it coming. I don't care who you are, unless you're a hater, unless you just hate Canelo. I just simply don't believe you if you say you saw this coming with Bivol. I watched the fight. It went, for the most part, I guess how Canelo's fights go, but his strategy just didn't work with Bivol, and nobody saw that coming. What do you think? There's a lot of chatter online about, look, he's not so good, and I said he was a bum, and there's a lot of that kind of chatter online. How do you think this loss affects his legacy?
In the long run, I don't think as much as some people would probably think it does, especially since we just mentioned there are a lot of people who were just really hoping that Canelo was going to lose anyway. Mm-hmm. But in terms of this affecting his overall legacy, if we look at the people he's lost to up till now, it's literally just Floyd Mayweather and now Dimitri Bivol, who is already on his own path to greatness at light heavyweight. So he's only lost to two of some of the best boxers, one of a previous generation, and now one of the best light heavyweights in the world today. And
I don't want to be hyperbolic when we talk about Bivol either. I'm not claiming, and I don't think you are at this point, that Bivol is an all-time great.
Oh, no.
But he is definitely an elite boxer of today.
Absolutely.
He's amongst the elite of today. But like I say, he's not an all-time great. And does losing to an all-time great possibly tarnish your legacy? I mean, depending on what happened, it certainly had an effect on fighters like Mike Tyson when he lost to Buster Douglas. I get that Buster Douglas was not the elite boxer that Bivol was, but when you lose in a huge in a fight where you're, what do you call it, the huge favorite, mm-hmm. that can knock some people's thoughts about you. What do you think he has to do to overcome this loss? Does he have to fight Bivol again?
I don't know. In terms of his legacy, I know he wants to get that one back. Mm-hmm. And if he feels he has to get that one back, he is going to fight Bivol again. I don't know if he absolutely has to maintain the building of the legacy that he is right now. Mm-hmm. But for him to, if he does get through Triple G again, and then goes up and fights Bivol after Bivol is unified light heavyweight, which he's going to now when he fights Artur Beterbiev, that makes that fight even bigger than it was the first time. So
what happens? Yeah.
Sorry, I wanted to hear that question.
What happens? Here's an interesting question. Completely out of Canelo's control. What happens if Bivol loses to Beterbiev?
Which could happen.
Yeah, it could. Beterbiev is no joke.
Well, then I guess Canelo fights Beterbiev, because I think regardless of what happens, Canelo does want to go up and have another crack at unifying light heavyweight. That was a goal that he had before he was even matched up with Bivol.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, fights against Bivol or Beterbiev can't hurt your legacy, especially if you have a win over either one of them.
No,
those are two of the best light heavyweights in the world today. And the fact that we're getting that fight is insane.
And I think what a lot of people are missing, they're saying that he's only gone up one weight class. I think we all can remember he's a relatively small super middleweight.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's come up from a couple of weight classes below super middleweight, and now he's there. So he's already small. So he didn't just move up one; he moved up a couple, got to super middleweight. Still, everything translated well. There has to be a point where the power doesn't translate as well, and it certainly didn't seem to with Canelo. It just seemed like his game plan was to wear him down, and he just didn't wear down. Maybe he was too big to wear down to that kind of power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the only other time we have to look at with Canelo going up to light heavyweight is when he fought Kovalev.
Yeah.
So his strategy before this, before moving up to light heavyweight and fighting Bivol, we saw it with the Caleb Plant and the Billy Joe fight.
Billy Joe, that's right.
He was just going to walk him down for the first few rounds and really wear that pressure on him and start piling on those power shots.
But he fought the same. He fought the same fight. He wasn't very active during the Plant fight either. Plant was winning.
Yeah.
Until the power slowly started to get to him, and he started getting trepidatious. And so there's for those of you who didn't see or aren't aware of the Canelo history here. I'll give you another one that's very similar, and of which you'll be pretty knowledgeable as well. I liken this to Israel Adesanya in MMA. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name. Who's the one he lost to at light heavyweight?
Jan Blachowicz.
Jan, yes. So when he lost to Jan, how does that affect his legacy? Like, do we just write these losses, Canelo's loss and Israel's loss, up as a stupid mistake? We went up. It was a mistake. It was too big for us. But doesn't that affect the way that people perceive them?
Yeah, I think with, I don't know, an excuse like that, I guess, is it kind of gives the fanboys of Canelo and Izzy like a reason to just write off a loss like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't really know how to think about it really, because I did think that Izzy was going to beat Jan. Obviously, Jan is a really big dude at light heavyweight. Like, he's, you know, an actual light heavyweight. He cuts from like 220, I think.
Yeah.
He's a big guy. Especially with Izzy's frame. Like, I think he only tipped the scale at like 203, but that's like him not even.
He weighed in. I won't usually be able to correct you in MMA because I think you're a little more up to date than I am, but he weighed in at 196.
Oh, did he? Was it actually that low?
Yeah.
Oh, God. I didn't know it was that low.
He walked in at his walk around weight and didn't bother gaining any. So he was underweight as a light heavyweight. I mean, he's in the range, of course, but when you know that your opponent's coming in, cutting down from 220, she's rough.
Yeah, no, for sure. And we saw that in the fight. Like, as soon as it went to the ground, Jan, you know, was able to just hold him there. And it's not like Jan's really known for his wrestling either.
Well, that's it. And for everybody out there who's possibly not experienced in combat sports, for those of you who say size doesn't matter, size matters. All things being equal, size is the single biggest, what do you want to call it, variable. If he's a lot bigger than you, it makes it a lot harder. I mean, you would know this, Andrew. You spar with a lot of guys who are bigger than you. I mean, you end up being tall enough that you can fight with them, but you very often spar with guys you're giving up 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds to. So I think you can probably explain maybe better than the rest of us. I certainly can't. I've never fought anybody bigger than me, but I'm 290 pounds.
Yeah, no, size is definitely a big thing. You got to be cautious, at least in boxing. For when I'm boxing, I find that you have to be careful of their power specifically. Because one that I know for power at least is Brandon at our club.
Yeah.
I have to stay away from his power
So but I think that's what Brandon is, about 185 walking around. Yeah. But you're right. He's an enormous puncher. What would you think? What is the difference? Again, try and remember that there are some people who haven't been in the ring. What is the difference between power and size? Like, say, for those, I know everybody watching, you guys don't really know the name here, but if it's Reese
is just a big guy.
Reese is just a big guy. I'm sure he hits. I'm sure he hits
not like
somewhat
trying
hard.
to knock Reese on air or anything, but like
but he's a smotherer.
But he's a big guy,
and he's a smotherer. He's hard to deal with. Yeah. So how do you, Andrew, especially because you're the smaller guy here? For everybody who's watching, he fights at 147 right now. Kalen fights at about 175, and this fellow Reese that we're talking about is super heavyweight. He's about 260. So he might actually be 280.
No, he's 260. He's 260. I talked to him.
Is he 260? Okay.
Yeah.
So even still, when he's coming in, it's not his power that you're worried about. What is it you worry about with bigger fighters like that? Like help people understand what it is about the size. Weight.
Putting the weight on the person. So if we get into a clinch and he just puts his body weight on me, I'm now lifting close to double my weight, trying to standing.
Is it just when he puts his weight on you? Or do you find that happens anytime in the clinch?
Anytime in the clinch when he puts his weight on me. Anybody that here it's a lot harder.
Does it affect the way that you can turn the corner?
You can't move a lot. You can't really. You have to clinch up and turn him around or turn around him.
Yeah. So it makes a big difference, even if they're not more powerful than you, if they're just bigger than you.
Yeah.
And that's my point with guys like Canelo and Izzy with those losses. My point on it is I think it does affect his legacy depending on what he does going forward.
Yeah.
He says he's got 4 or 5 fights left. They better be big fights. To make you remember or to make you forget a loss, they better be big fights. This actually moves on to another interesting topic. What does it take to surpass a fighter's legacy who's already beaten you? And I specifically put this one in here because we've got Canelo, who famously lost years ago to Mayweather. Now, he's done some things that Mayweather has never done. I've never liked the whole, I fought this many champions, because there's a lot of paper champions like David Ortiz and all that kind of thing. Victor Ortiz, cheapers, David Ortiz. But he fought a lot of paper champions like that. And it's hard to say that they count, but Canelo has fought just as many. I think it's 22 to 21 or something like that for champions they fought. So, I mean, and then when you look at Canelo has unified 2 divisions. Mm-hmm. He unified junior middleweight and he unified super middleweight. So Mayweather never, ever unified a division. There's no denying his greatness. But Canelo lost to Mayweather, and then you start to see him achieving some things that Mayweather couldn't. Is there a point where even though he lost to Mayweather, his legacy becomes superior to Mayweather's and he goes down possibly ranked higher in the all-time ranks?
I think it's going to be a very 50-50 conversation, regardless of what we say.
Yeah.
I would think that maybe if he hadn't had lost to Bivol and he had gone on to unify light heavyweight as he had planned, there would be a much stronger discussion to have at this point to say that Canelo has overcome that loss to Mayweather.
Yeah.
And he can now be seen as the number one guy of this generation, at least.
Well, I think we can already say he's the number one guy since Mayweather.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I would say that, yeah.
It's, but that's a good point. But now we've kind of contradicted ourselves. So it does affect his legacy.
It does at this moment.
Right.
But I agree with you in the sense that it depends on what he does going forward. If he were to retire today, then yeah.
Yeah, it's it. No, I think so. I think, but you look at Manny Pacquiao. He was his legacy. If you look at his resume is superior to Mayweather's. But I watched that fight against Mayweather, and I have a hard time. Now, I'm not convinced. I know that he lost. I know he was injured and all that stuff. But fighters, as we all know, fighters always have aches and pains. I'm sure you guys haven't fought in a couple of months, and I'm sure you guys still have aches and pains just from training. So going into a fight, it's hard to say, like, I'm going to give Pacquiao a lot of credit for being injured, because we're always all injured when you're in the ring. But his legacy is kind of better. When does Pacquiao get this? Does he go down as greater than Mayweather, even though he lost to Mayweather? Relatively convincingly?
It's weird because I would probably say no, because the aura of Mayweather's undefeated streak and his skill as a defensive boxer, like I almost think that's enough to carry him past Pacquiao. But I do think Pacquiao has a better resume overall.
I do too. I think that's the complication with the ranking him. But I mean, when you look at some of the all-time greats, like who we thinking here, Joe Louis. Joe Louis lost to Rocky Marciano. Nobody. If you look at the all-time ranks, have you ever seen Rocky Marciano rated over Joe Louis? I never have.
No.
Joe Louis is in the running for greatest boxer of all time, and you never, as much as the Rocky fans would love to think so, you never hear that about Rocky. So I mean, he did something. It was late in his career, but so was Pacquiao. Pacquiao was late in his career. People will say that Mayweather was older. It's true. But as a defensive boxer, you take less damage. And it's not like Mayweather was an active fighter. He'd fought once, maybe twice a year. So I don't know. It's an interesting topic to see. I think a lot of it has to do with this conversation. Has a lot to do with our next topic. Actually, is recency bias. It's very difficult when you see somebody doing something amazing. We saw Mayweather doing something amazing. It's just the eye test. Like we all, with the eye test, frig, if Mayweather doesn't look like a top 10 all-time boxer, but we look at the opponents he's had, maybe not as much, but even still, he's one of the top 5 defensive boxers of all time. I would argue probably top 3.
I'd probably say top 3, honestly.
Yeah, I can only think Pernell Whitaker, Willie Pep, Nicolino Losh. So he'd be number 4 in my on my list. But that's some pretty amazing company.
Absolutely.
That's some pretty amazing company. I think. Yeah, we'll get into more of this. We'll get into more of it. What does it take? This is an interesting topic. I think, to be honest, if I'm talking about Canelo specifically, and I guess this also goes for Izzy in MMA, I think they have to run their own division at least once, probably twice. You run your division, and then you clear out the up and comers so that nobody goes, yeah, but this guy was up and coming. Unless somebody, I mean, it happened just recently. We're talking about Tyson Fury building his legacy, and one of the up and comers was Efe Ajagba, who looked like a more skilled Deontay Wilder until he met Frank Sanchez. Yeah. So Sanchez kind of took care of Ajagba for Tyson, but I think it takes unification. I think it takes beating all everybody out there. I don't think that these fights against guys that you're going to beat, I don't think they're even really particularly interesting.
I think in Izzy's case, he's pretty much on the cusp of already surpassing that Jan loss, because he's already gone back and lapped the division, and now he's about to fight Alexander Pereira, who's one of the greatest kickboxers in the world today, and has 2 wins over Izzy right now. So that's like the big fight right now. Yeah, in kickboxing. Yeah. So if Izzy gets that win over Pereira in MMA, like, I think that Jan loss is so far behind him at that point. Yeah,
I heard Michael Bisping talking the other day, and he talks about how losses are more forgivable in MMA than they are in boxing, and I think that's probably true. The way that boxers get developed, you get developed by they feed middle of the road guys to you. In MMA, you could make the UFC with 5-6 fights.
That's
and
what
now all of a sudden you're facing the top guys in the world, even guys who aren't in the top 10. They're still in the UFC. They're still in the in the premier. So it's more difficult for boxers, I think. But I agree with you, by the way, on the Izzy point. I do think that Izzy overcomes it if he beats Pereira. Canelo, even if he goes back and beats Bivol, I think it has raised questions. I think that people now wonder, can I just outwork him? Because that's what Bivol did. I mean, Bivol didn't get broken down, but it wasn't just not breaking down. He outworked him. So, I mean, I think it's going to be more than just one. I think he's going to have to defend his unification. Maybe he'll have to face a couple of guys, a Charlo, definitely Benavidez, but that's middleweight. I think those things are important. But I think if he beats, especially Benavidez, if he was to fight Benavidez next, I think people would forget about it immediately. Especially
if he beat him.
Yes. But the way he's going, where he's going against Triple G, and then who's he fighting after Triple G? I think it's Charlo.
I'm not sure. I haven't heard anything. What's the deal? Bivol and Triple G? Wasn't that the deal he had signed?
I thought the deal was 3 fights. The first 2 were Triple G and then Charlo. I thought. I could be mistaken on that. Do you remember there, Andrew?
I didn't hear anything about the Charlo at all.
No, that's one that
I knew that offer was
on the table.
Yeah.
He's just loud. I actually don't think that Charlo does a whole lot for Bivol's or for Canelo's legacy. Benavidez does. So now we're talking about recency bias in sports, which completely blends into what we're talking about with Mayweather, with Tyson Fury, with Canelo. I mean, people now are saying is Canelo the greatest Mexican boxer of all time? As opposed to Julio Cesar Chavez. Like, I think that recency bias is a funny thing. Like, have we forgotten Julio Cesar Chavez?
I would still say he's the greatest Mexican boxer of all time. But Canelo is certainly, like, the fact that he's in that conversation should be acknowledged.
I think he's top 3 in the Mexican boxers, but I don't know if he's even approaching Julio Cesar Chavez. There's a guy who won like 90 fights in a row. Come on now. That's crazy. Here's a question for you, Andrew. You're not a particular fan of Mayweather. What would your take be on? It's a slightly off topic, but not really, I guess. On somebody's like Mayweather's 50-0. Does that make him the greatest boxer of all time?
I think it makes him weaker as a boxer.
Weaker? Why does never being beat make you weaker?
When has he ever showed adversity?
Well, I mean, that's the argument against Tyson too, right? It's the hardest fight that he had, Mayweather, was against a 50-50 fighter, Emmanuel Augustus.
Yep.
The Drunken Master, who, by the way, if you haven't seen The Drunken Master, to everybody out there, it's absolutely amazing. He's one of the most entertaining boxers ever. I'll see if I can quickly find something for you here. Just as a complete aside, let me see if I can actually do this. You'll have to. I don't know how to screen share at this point. Oh, there we are.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Share screen. All right. This one? Okay. Give me 1 second. Not that. There we go.
It's just crazy that this guy could do all the damage that he did.
Yeah. Like, look at
He didn't. he mastered so much skill to the point he could bend it.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. He's an extremely entertaining boxer. But that guy, how do I get off of screen sharing here? There we go. That guy is he's middle of the road. I think he's 35-35 is his record. But he's fought some great fighters. He's super entertaining. I don't mean to get us off topic there, but so recency bias, that's what we were talking about.
Right.
Happens to so many fighters where you'll see somebody do something great and you're like, they're the greatest of all time.
Happens more than I'd like.
More than you'd like. And I think because I know where this is going, I'm going to move up a topic here. Tyson Fury, all-time great?
Can be.
Could be. But
could be.
But you've heard it.
Uh-huh.
So for perspective, Kalen is actually one of the biggest. He's an enormous fan of Tyson Fury, as are we. We quite like Tyson Fury, although Kalen would accuse us of otherwise.
Because of all the conversations we have, it seems I'm always defending Tyson Fury.
It's the truth. But he gets, I can't tell you the number of times he moves like Ali. He's the greatest heavyweight ever. Some people are going so far as to say he's the greatest boxer ever, which
no,
I don't even think he belongs on any, I'll say at least top 10 list. I can't see him on a top 20 heavyweights list. It's
top 20 is pushing it for me. Top 10, probably not.
I don't think he's done anything to, he's never unified a division. He definitely has, in my mind, this is what you need for greatness. You need your seminal moment. Usually. That's one that can be, but you generally people need to have that seminal moment. They're coming to party. For Oscar de la Hoya, it would have been the drubbing he gave. For Pacquiao, would have been the drubbing he gave to Oscar de la Hoya. For Lennox Lewis, strangely, it would have been Mike Tyson, although he had he fought many great fighters. But for Tyson Fury, he's got Klitschko. Mm-hmm. And I mean, his detractors would say that Klitschko was old, which is true, but he was still, at the time, he was still
heavyweight, really, for a guy like Klitschko.
Well, that's true. I mean, heavyweight does age differently, but Klitschko he wasn't the fighter that he was earlier, but he still was elite. He was still confusing everybody at heavyweight. Nobody knew how to beat him.
He himself is one of the best heavyweights of all time. Absolutely.
And Tyson Fury beat him.
Mm-hmm.
But what has he done? What has he done before or after?
Other than the Wilder fight, and I can admit it, I'm not afraid to admit it. Other than
the Wilder fight's fun.
Yeah, no.
They were a lot of fun.
Great.
But what does beating a guy like Wilder, who has never beaten a top 10 opponent himself? It's not true. I guess an octogenarian Ortiz, I suppose, is his seminal moment, if you can call it that. That's the only top 10 guy he's ever fought, and he fought him when he was 40, when he was clearly diminished.
My God, that guy doesn't age.
Well, I mean, I'm not saying he wasn't good, but he's not. I don't think he's good enough to say it's your seminal moment. It's you beat. Oh my God, you beat him! Like, he's a good boxer. If you can beat him, you've got a future. But if you can't, you're never going to hit the Joshuas and the Usyks.
Mm-hmm.
So I would argue, not only has Tyson Fury not really done anything, he's built this huge fan base based on his trilogy with Deontay Wilder, and one moment where he seemingly got knocked out at the end of their first fight. And
the resurrection.
The resurrection. That's exactly it. But it was so dramatic that we all reacted to it. That's recency bias. Yeah, it was an amazing moment. But against somebody that nobody is ever going to say he's one of the greatest boxers ever. You know what I mean? He's not a good boxer. He's got a lot of power, a lot of speed. He's got the physical attributes. He seems like a good guy.
Mm-hmm.
But can you really base somebody's all-time position on Deontay Wilder?
Of course not.
I would like to see. Listen, I'm a huge fan of watching legacies, seeing people build their legacies, whether it's football or boxing. Anytime there's history on the line, I am there. I'm watching it. I think that if Fury retires, and if he had a concussion from the last one, then I guess he needs to retire. But if he retires now, he doesn't go down as an all-time great. I don't believe it.
No, I would agree with that. That's definitely something I agree with, even as a Fury fan. Him retiring now doesn't cement that all-time great status.
He needs another 4 or 5 fights to even be considered. But people are looking at, and this is kind of the thing, we're going to get into it when we talk about the next one here, but recency bias, people look at Fury and they remember the emotions that they felt when he stood up. They remember the drama of surviving that power. And I think they forget some of the amazing, unbelievable things. And I'm just going to single out 2 guys that guys like Joe Louis and Muhammad Ali did in their day. 22 great fighters in the fought during Muhammad Ali's era. Do you want to know how many he fought? 22. And the only one he lost was to Larry Holmes when everybody thought he was way too old to be competing anymore. I mean, it was so bad. Legitimately, there are interviews where Larry Holmes talks about crying, weeping afterwards, because he was so sad that Muhammad Ali should not have been in the ring like that. He was sad for beating up his legacy, his hero.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think this kind of thing we forget. Joe Louis defended the title for 25 years or 22 years. He beat, I think he had 25 defenses. Like, unbelievable. And we forget these things for a guy, we call him the all-time great. Tyson Fury has defended his belt 3 times, twice against the same guy. You know what I mean?
I don't disagree. And that's why Muhammad Ali's legacy and status as the greatest of all time is still like nobody's touched it yet, in my opinion.
Yeah. I don't think so either. I think that we have to stop looking at the eye test. Listen, if it was up to the eye test, I would be proclaiming that that Vasyl Lomachenko is the greatest boxer that's ever laced him up.
Yeah.
I mean, the skill set that he has is mind-boggling.
He's definitely the most skilled boxer today. Up there with Usyk.
Absolutely. And from the same team, what a shocker. But this is a good time to move into. So Fury all-time great, yes or no?
No.
And I will say the same thing, but I'll give it the caveat of yet, depending on what happens in the future.
Yeah.
All right. This is a fun one. We'll get into every week. We're going to have a discussion that's called all-time talk. And today is the hardest one to place, as far as I'm concerned, in all of boxing, is Mike Tyson. What do you think there, Andrew? What's your take on Mike Tyson? Where does he belong in the? Because you'll hear people say, you've heard people talk about Tyson. Where do you think he belongs in the all-time ranks?
I'm gonna get a lot of hate. One, I don't know the most about Mike Tyson. I never really studied him as a boxer.
Nice.
But I'd put him middle of the road to like upper middle.
Amongst the greats.
Amongst the greats, obviously. I'm not saying that he's in the middle of the road, just a middle of the road boxer.
Right.
But, like, he's about middle of the road of the all-time greats.
What do you think there, Kalen?
I'd probably rank him a little higher personally, because I do really like Mike Tyson.
Yeah.
But I do agree with the recent conversations that have come up, or I don't know how recent they are, because there have been conversations like this ever since his career ended.
Yeah.
He's a great boxer, but where he stands in the conversation of like the greatest heavyweights of all time, I do think in terms of where people typically place him, he is overrated.
I would say he is both, and I'll have to explain this, both the most overrated and the most underrated boxer of all time. Now it's two different groups, but I think he's amongst his fans, and I am an enormous Mike Tyson fan. I've got my little figure of him right here behind me on the wall. I'm an enormous Mike Tyson fan. He was amazing. By the eye test, again, he's one of the best of all time. But if you talk to people who are detractors, they'll say he doesn't even belong on an all-time list.
Which is much.
I think it is, but I think it comes from, to be honest, I think it comes from Teddy Atlas. Teddy Atlas, you guys know, said that he's basically 0-6. He had 6 fights, that were a challenge, and every time he met those challenges, he wilted.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That's the narrative. I don't think that narrative is fair. I think if you look at we just talked about Tyson Fury, how many top 10 opponents has Tyson Fury faced? 2? I'm sorry.
Three.
Yes, in his career, because he just fought White, Wilder. Whether he belongs in the top 10 or not, it doesn't matter. He is a top 10 fighter,
obviously,
and Klitschko.
Yeah,
Joshua has 6 or 7 that he's fought from the top 10. Wilder has never beaten anybody. Well, I'm sorry. He beat Ortiz, so he's got 1.
I think Ortiz already was 4th in the world at the time.
I think he might have been.
I'm not sure.
And even if you include Usyk's only fought 1 top 10 heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
How many heavyweight fights does Usyk have, though?
2.
He literally
He's only got 2. No, it's absolutely true. But I'm making the point. If you look at all 4 of the top, heavyweight fighters, you're looking at 12 top 10 opponents between 4 of them for their entire career.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson I believe it was between 84 and 86. I believe those 3 years, he fought 13 quality opponents.
Mm-hmm.
He beat Larry Holmes, and I don't want to hear any garbage about how Larry Holmes, if we accept Klitschko as a quality opponent for Fury, we have to accept Holmes as a quality opponent for Tyson. He went 21-3 after Mike Tyson beat him. So don't tell, and he fought for the title 3 times.
Yeah.
So don't tell me that Larry Holmes was finished. You know, he was far from finished. Now, he was diminished. He wasn't, prime Holmes, but he was no joke.
Mm-hmm.
A Bone Crusher Smith, and he fought everybody that there was. It's everybody of the day. He cleared out his division. He unified his division. He did all the things that you expect of an all-time great. But it is colored by the losses later in his career. He had that odd when he wasn't with Customato and Kevin Rooney. He went downhill. I do think it affects his legacy, but I still think that his accomplishments, youngest heavyweight champion of all time, fought everybody in his day. I do think it places him in the all-time great list.
Mm-hmm.
But much like Andrew, unless I'm misunderstanding where you're placing him, I would put him at the lower end of the top 10, as in like actually 10, or the upper part of the top 20, maybe 11 to 12. Mm-hmm. But in that area between 10 and 12, I don't think I'd place him any higher than that. But he's certainly an all-time great, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's so. Last one for the pro ranks. Just on the heels of the fight last night, Ryan Garcia, is he for real?
I haven't seen the Garcia fight from last night. I don't know.
Give me a quick second. Let me see if I can do this again.
Yeah. See if you can find a clip from it.
Yeah.
I haven't even tried finding it yet.
I heard he had knocked him down 3 times across 3 rounds. Like, geez.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah. So here it goes. Let me get there's a lot of that. Here it is. I'll mute that so you can.
That's fine. He's quick. Nice. Oh, that was a nice cross.
And I tell you, I'm only going to show you a small snippet, But this is what the entire fight looked like. It was
It's a good fight.
Very, very quick jabs. Fortuna didn't do a whole lot. He got knocked down by 2 body shots and then by 1 to the head. But
Well, you know he has good body shots.
Yeah.
well, he trained with Canelo for years, and Canelo's definitely the greatest of all
Liver
time.
shot master.
Or not the greatest of all time, but the greatest certainly right now at the old body shot, liver shot.
Yeah.
But this is what it was. He just pot shotted him the entire fight. It
was smart. I liked Ryan. I liked Garcia before. It's hard to say now when he took that 2-3 year layoff.
Yeah, I think it was 1, but yeah, it felt like longer.
It felt a long
while.
time. It
Coming off the Campbell win.
Yeah, right off the Campbell win.
Jeepers, I keep calling him Thomas.
Yeah, he should have jumped into the next fight. Should have just been prepared. But then he took a year, I guess, and then put on a great performance. I won't say that it's a bad performance. He changed up his style.
He really did. Everybody knows that he doesn't have great head movement. He's very tall. He's very erect. But how often do I say your best defense is not hand defense? It's not your high guard. It's not your head movement. It's your feet. And last night, he used his feet for defense. He'd get in, pop, and back out, pop, pop, back out. You know what I mean? He'd change it up every once in a while. Every once in a while, he'd blitz with 3 punches, but it was really a sniper contest. It was his speed overwhelmed him. Now, do we think that will translate to someone like Lomachenko at 135?
I wouldn't say so. No,
I'm not sure. Do we think?
I don't think you're going to land single shots against Loma. You could barely.
Seems difficult, right?
Loma.
I'm not even sure if that approach would take it for a guy like Kambosos, who's so gritty he'll eat some of those to get at you. You know what I mean? Or a guy like Tank Davis, who does have some pretty good head movement and is explosive. Well, this is another one. You're a tall fighter here, Andrew. What? That's his advantage, is speed and height.
Yeah.
So in a way, you're similar to him in that way. What do you think his chances are against a guy like Tank Davis?
Keeping that jab moving. Instead of just throwing one jab across, you throw 2-3 jabs in a combo. Just 2-3 jabs. Don't throw any other punch until you set it up, until he knows that you're just going to throw jabs.
Yeah.
And then you throw maybe 1 or 2 jabs and then land it with a cross. But you can't stop moving. You keep moving for 12 rounds.
Oh, you almost, for sure. You got to keep moving. You can't let a guy like Tank set.
No, you have to move the entire time. Don't get close to the ropes.
And don't get close to the ropes.
Because Tank Davis would use his head movement to pressure in.
Yeah.
And
it's lateral movement.
Garcia. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just don't know if he can evade Tank Davis with no head movement. I love that he's using his legs, but you need other. It can't just be one type of defense. I'm going to say, so let's take a vote here. Who thinks that King Rye is for real? What do you think, Galen?
So with me and Ryan Garcia, he's obviously very, very talented. And that's something that a lot of people who tend to hate on fighters do. They just don't acknowledge any of their talents or anything that they can do. Ryan Garcia is a really good boxer.
For sure.
I don't think he can hang in there with guys like Loma, Haney, Tank. And, I'd say he could beat Kambosos, I'd say. But I don't think he can win in a sniper match with Haney. No. Because I think Haney blends all of his skills together, feet, head movement, and hand defense.
He does, but he doesn't have great power.
No, he doesn't, but I don't think he needs that either. I think he could beat Ryan Garcia on points. And I think they're 3-3 against each other because they fought in the amateurs.
They did fight quite a few times in the amateurs, you're right.
Hiding for amateur fights.
So as far as for real, what I mean is, do you think he's going to be a future champion? So your vote is no?
I'd say yes, depending on the matchup.
What do you think, Andrew? You think he's for real? You think he's He's going to be a quality champion?
Quality champion, no, but I think he might luck his way into a championship fight and might possibly win. But I don't see him being a high level, like an all-time champion.
I think with Ryan Garcia, there's room for growth. He's still very young.
For sure.
Oh my goodness. I think he 23?
He's insanely young.
He's
I would say for now, if we look at him right now, what I see is, I hate to say no, because he's unbelievably fast and he's powerful. But I see that carrying him. I disagree slightly. I think he would beat Haney. I think that's his only shot to success, is fighting Haney. If he fights Haney, I think his power can take him to the win.
Yeah.
He's also a little faster than Haney, but I think Haney's craftier, so I don't think that'll make as big a difference.
I do think out of the three, he has his better chances against Haney. I still think Haney wins, but he has better chances against Haney. I
think the millisecond that he goes to defend his title, whether it's against Loma or Tank, maybe Kambosos, I just don't know if he's got enough to have sustained success in that division. So I think we've got, what was your vote, Andrew?
I said no to a quality champion, but I think he'll luck his way into it.
Yeah. So you and I are agreed. I think we're 2-1 here, Kalen. We win.
Epic.
All right. So we've got a couple of good questions here for Reddit. The amateur boxing subreddit on Reddit, of course, has asked us a couple of questions. We're always going to get into this. And this is time for Reddit answers. The very first one we're asked on Reddit was clinching. Would a crackdown on clinching improve boxing? And I think we've got, for those of you who don't know, Andrew is an outboxer. He fights at welterweight, very mobile. He doesn't utilize power a lot in his style. Kalen is much more of a multi-dimensional fighter. He can get inside. He can fight outside if he has to. So we've got two polar opposites. So it'll be a good answer to hear what you guys think, because clinching takes a different form in both of your fights. So first, let's hear from Kalen. What's your take? Clinching, pro, by the way. You can talk about pro or amateur if you feel there's a difference.
I think I'll approach it like blanket it.
Okay.
Because my opinion on clinching is and this probably doesn't come as a shock, but I don't clinch too often in my fights or even when I'm sparring. Yeah. Because I understand its usefulness, especially if somebody's coming in on you. You can clinch just to get a little break from the pressure. Obviously, the clinch in boxing, there's different ways you can use it to get yourself in and out of certain situations. What I would like to see, and maybe I'm biased because I do come from a more Muay Thai background. Yeah, I would love to see more work on the inside with, like, getting more time to work inside the clinch to open up striking opportunities. Not full on high, obviously, because you can't like pull and push people around in the clinch in boxing.
Of course.
But if I could work on the inside with like one hand on the back of the neck and throw a few uppercuts, that'd be a lot of fun.
Hand on the back of the neck is never going to happen, but longer clinches.
It never will, which is why my opinion the water.
but longer clinches, you've only fought in Canada and you fought in New Brunswick as well.
Yeah.
Sorry, Nova Scotia. But the refereeing for clinching is much the same across Canada. Where they break it up very quickly. In the States, it's different. It's much closer to the pros and you fought in the States too, Andrew. So yeah, when you fight down there, I'm not saying they let it go. They don't hang you out to dry, but it's my opinion that they actually adhere to the rules a little bit more closely, because you break up a clinch when it's intentionally delaying a fight. If you're working, they let you work.
And they'll make it known too.
And they make it known. They'll tell you, work.
Yeah.
You'll hear the coaches from the corner, work, get your hands on the inside.
I know because I've only fought in the US once.
Yeah.
So all my fights before that, I knew okay, if I either if I clinch or if I get clinched, I don't really have to do anything. I spin out, just try to get to my open area, and if they break it up, they break it up.
Yeah.
It's usually broken up within 3 seconds.
Yeah.
So I went into the US with the same state of mind. It's just going to get broken up the second I clinch. I got in, and the ref in there was telling me to work out of it. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, this is nicer. I like this.
Letting you work a little bit. Yeah.
It's not
So
like
do you think
forbidden thing?
So do you think that that a crackdown on clinching, more like what we do in Canada, because this came from an international
I figured.
boxer. In Canada, we do cut the crackdown on clinching, and I don't think it improves things. I'm a referee as well, and I try to let them work. It can be difficult when all the pressure from your peers says when they clinch, break it up.
Yeah.
So what's your thought? I do think that
partly why I don't clinch, because I know as soon as we do clinch, I have barely any time to work anyway.
Well, that's right, but you do use a clinch. You use it when they get inside you, Andrew.
Yeah.
When they get close to you, you try and clinch immediately so that they have to go back to their own get the hell back to your own range. This is my workspace. Off you go.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Your vote is no there, Kalen? You don't think that, or do you think you'd like to see that?
I'm going to go, I think I'm kind of undecided. I'm very much fence sitting because I understand both sides.
Well, because it wouldn't affect your style at all. Like you say, you like to work inside. So if they crack down on you, just got to go head to head and fight inside. You're okay. Yeah. Andrew, on the other hand, would not enjoy that.
In terms of amateur boxing in Ontario, I would say a crackdown would improve it.
Do you think?
Give me more time to work.
Well, what do you think, Andrew?
I think Canada specifically should loosen up more like the rest of the world. Let people work. Let things happen. I know it's going to make it harder on myself, but it makes for a little bit more interesting fights. You actually still get a flow in your fight instead of immediately you get a flow, you clinch up. That flow's now broken up. Now
no, for sure.
It's so it allows in fighters, in boxers, work a lot more.
Exactly. So my take on this, and we'll finish this topic with this, is I do not believe that there should be a crackdown on clinching. I believe that clinching adds so much to the sport. And if you take away clinching, and I'm going to say especially from outboxers, because I'm specifically, my specialty is outboxing, you take away clinching from outboxers and you're giving the inboxers an unfair advantage. Their pathway to you is now unfettered, and I think it gives them more of an advantage. So I don't think it would improve boxing. Certainly at the highest levels, you see guys that are outboxers. You don't see inside boxers commonly winning the Olympics, commonly winning the Worlds. Sometimes in the pros for sure, but I think it's too much of a skill set to lose. So I think that's where we leave that one.
Yeah.
The two of you are going to have a lot to say on this one. This is one of the most common questions. I would say top two questions on Reddit: how to fight a taller boxer, how to fight an aggressive boxer. So this week we're going to look at how to fight a taller boxer. So again, I'm gonna ask Kalen first.
Yeah.
What he likes to do when he gets in against a taller boxer, what affords him the most success, and then I'm going to ask you what gives you the most problem when you're in the ring. You're the outboxer. You're one of the best outboxers I've ever seen. What gives you a hassle when you're in the ring? And that will also give the people a little bit of a better answer. So what do you think there, Kenan? What do you do when you're facing a good outboxer that's taller than you?
It's funny because it's totally understandable why this is like one of the most asked questions ever, because it's like very much one of the hardest puzzles to solve when you're fighting. Mm-hmm. So Andrew being one of my main sparring partners, I'm almost always giving up a height advantage and a reach advantage because Andrew is taller and longer than me. Mm-hmm. The biggest thing with Andrew is like when we're standing next to each other, he really doesn't look that much taller than me. But the way we fight in the ring, he appears so much taller than me. Like, even when I look at him, I'm like, wow, did he grow? Like, he got.
Can I just break in just for 1 sec there, Kalen? I just want to make this point because you've hit the nail on the head there or something. For everybody who hasn't been in the ring, reach advantage doesn't work the way that the graphic would suggest. Whenever they put the tail of the tape, they put the boxers up there, and this guy's got an 81-inch reach, and this guy's got a 78-inch reach. He's got a 3-inch reach advantage. Oh my God, that's so difficult to get past. But remember, that's full arm span.
Mm-hmm.
Not only is it full, so you cut that in half, it's 1.5 inches, which is still a lot. But the biggest teller of your reach in the ring, obviously, you have to deal with the tools, the physical tools you have, but it's your style. Andrew is very upright. He's very tall. He stands tall. His stance is a little narrower, so he can have a greater range around the ring. You fight shorter because you fight more in that fighting in a closet kind of style. So your reach is necessarily going to be shorter because of your style. I don't think a lot of people understand that sometimes, that the style lends to the reach. In any case, I just wanted to make that point that it's not just physical attributes, it's also your style. Go ahead there, Ken. How do you fight taller boxers?
So with me, maybe it's because of the way I fight. I already have this kind of certain mindset when I'm getting into the ring, especially with a guy like Andrew, who I know is taller, I know is longer, and he's faster than me too.
Yeah.
I know for a fact I'm going to get hit. So I kind of have to immediately get that out of my head. Like, I know I'm not going to like have this crazy like Loma style performance against him where like it's going to like I'm going to put Andrew in the Matrix or anything like that. Usually it's the opposite. He puts me in the Matrix. But I know I'm going to get hit. So that's where my favorite defensive game plan comes into play. I really like to operate out of my high guard.
Yeah.
So I've gotten a lot better at using my feet to get in and out of range more fluidly. And I've gotten a lot better at using my high guard to take a few shots off the high guard to work my way in so that I'm not taking them to the face or anything. And then that's when I start to try to put some combinations together. But with Andrew, he's so mobile. He doesn't really give me the chance to, he never stands right in front of me, which is obviously what he's supposed to do.
Right.
So then the game plan becomes, how do I get him to the ropes?
And as you can see here, can you see the screen that I'm trying to share? Yeah. So this is the two of you sparring, and you just kind of fooling about. So it's not like it's anything super serious here, but
that's a light.
You can see exactly what you're talking about. I'll just pause that and come back to the screen here. It can be very difficult. What do you think there, Andrew? What bothers you the most when you're fighting a shorter fighter? What gives you troubles?
It's pressure, but I have to say in a specific way.
Okay.
It's not always just, I'm going to go straight forward. I'm just going to run straight forward at him. I don't care how many punches I'll take. It's strategic pressure. It's, I'll take small inches. I'm going to take a small step to the side. I'm going to take a small step on a 45 and just slowly backing me up into it. Because it feels like we're staying at the same pace. Like clearly you're taking a small, like half an inch step closer, but I take half a step inch back. Like, and it just slowly backs you up and you kind of lose your sight of, oh, I'm actually getting close to the ropes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm going to get stuck here. Or think
they
about
almost lull your ring sense to sleep.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you have trouble with very forward moving but level changing opponents?
Everyone does to a certain extent. So yeah, I do, but I'm getting better at it.
Yep.
But it takes a little bit of it's difficult. Anybody that says that either defensive boxes are boring and are running, or people that are going high pressure and moving forward is just sprinting at people, don't know what they're talking about.
No, for sure.
Because it is strategic.
Absolutely it is. I think that to sum it up, I think for all the Redditors out there, if you're the shorter boxer, move forward, cut off the ring. Cut off the ring. You've got to make the space that they have to work in. We call that the workspace. You've got to limit their workspace. If you can limit your workspace, so imagine how much easier it would be for you, Kalen, if you could limit him to a quarter of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
If you can limit him to a quarter of the ring, you've got half your battle won. Now you've made him stand in front of you, which is not what he wants to do.
Mm-hmm.
So you've got to find a way to make somebody stand in front of you. Level changes, moving forward, cutting off the ring. She's not easy. And I will say this, punches in bunches. Do not try and exchange jabs or sniping shots with a good outboxer.
Mm-hmm.
You will not win. So that's all the topics I got. You guys got anything else for?
No,
honestly, as far as episode 1 goes, I'd say this was a lot of fun.
It's a lot of fun. We'll develop it as we move forward, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Things
will develop and we'll get a little better at this, and we'll have some more questions. Eventually we'll end up going live.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll have some good guests coming up, hopefully on the horizon. I guess I don't want to give it up too soon exactly who we've got coming, but we've got a world champion, a former world champion pro coming on that we're very excited about, and one of the highest rated female amateur boxers in Canada and in fact in the world for another one. Very, very exciting. So everybody who's watching at home, thank you very much. It was a lot of fun, and we will see you guys next week.